And welcome back to the Politics of Sport, Sport of Politics podcast. I'm your co-host, Geoff Embler, along with...
And I'm Jonathan Grella. It's been a beat.
It's been a little bit. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus, but glad to be back. And apologize for the echo in my office. It looks like I'm in a
interrogation
fake
room
background or some sort of interrogation room or hostage type situation, but
right.
Everything's fine. I'll blink twice if anything's...
When you say say everything's fine, it sure
everything's fine.
Yeah.
I guess
we're ramping it back up again because there's a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of stuff going on, and we're gonna do some fast topics, lightning round ish type conversation. So top of mind right now is this Urban Meyer situation in Jacksonville. And I love this. I just lost it. Where did it go?
Love this. I'm sure
Shelley I had this great.
The
Jaguars sending out the link for their for the Urban's Avail today, presented by CarShield.
Brought to you by
either good for the folks at CarShield because it's getting a lot more eyeballs, or maybe they didn't wish they were part of this presser today, but
should have been bad idea jeans, as dungarees certainly played a factor in all this.
Yeah, a lot of denim involved here. So what's
my
on your
take
mind about this? What's your take?
All right, so so much, and obviously he's giving me PTSD type flashbacks to my NFL days. First of all, and Michael Lombardi and others have pointed this out very astutely, which is that barring an emergency, coaches must travel home to and from games with their teams. That's just, and that really seems to be what the issue is with his locker room. If you believe Michael Silver's reports that he's lost some confidence in the locker room. If indeed he has lost confidence in the locker room, and that's an if, it sounds like it's been a confluence of events, and oftentimes, and I know this from experience, people who've worked with Urban Meyer, that it's a tough transition from college to the pros, and the leverage equation between head coach and players is different, and all that. And this guy seems to, invite drama and, bring it around wherever he may go.
That's what's so striking to me. I mean, when he got this job, every job he's had, there's been some kind of drama. And so to me, it was like, when you get as brilliant as a coach as he may be, there's always an Urban Meyer thing. And here we are again.
The legend of Urban. They used to say about Bill Parcells that he was like a mercenary. He'd be there. He's a turnaround artist. Turn your program around and then bolt, before you wanted him to. And this guy is like Irish exiting for different reasons and with way more drama along the way. So, there's a million things to say about him. What I find noteworthy, besides the flying separately from the team, and again, that is a huge no-no.
That really struck me when I didn't even know that was a thing you could do.
Even fired coaches fly back with their teams. I mean, It's absolutely true. All right. The other aspect here too is I don't think it's any surprise to anyone that when it comes to celebrities, sports, entertainment, politics, even, that philandering is commonplace. And this is not about, it's not about sex, right? This bringing us back to the late 90s in politics, but this isn't about that, right? And certainly whatever his arrangement or understanding or lack thereof with Shelley is their deal. So why would a video of him, heavy petting some lady in a bar be, why are we talking about firing, especially first year of a guy's tenure? He's not even halfway through his first season yet, right? I mean, first of all, video kills, right? And incidents, regardless of what they are, when you could replay them over and over again, they are way worse, right? You see it with domestic violence, and I hate to compare anything to that, but it fights.
Yeah, there's surveillance video. I mean, that's
anytime there's a video you could play on a loop, it just makes everything more real and worse, right? So there's that. Because imagine the print story of this with no video, even if it was verified, without any visual to provide that mental picture, would be a different deal. So if this is about that, meaning that, about morals clause, he's not, first of all, going to get fired for violating a morals clause for having an adulterous affair, if that even happened, or whatever, or touching somebody, unless it was not consensual. So if it turns into your guy Deshaun Watson, and women come forward in the next few days, which is kind of how these things go in politics and sports, where now the floodgates are open, and whether they're opportunists or actual victims or whatever, and somebody surfaces and says, I was his longtime mistress, and he urged me to get an abortion, or he said he was going to leave his wife, and there's something like that, or there's unwelcome advances or touching or anything like that, then we're talking a different deal. But if this is just a matter of adultery, I mean, we couldn't get a quorum in the NFL of coaches or players if that was the standard, sadly.
I mean,
that's just a deal.
The uproar about this, to me, just points to there are other issues, behind the scenes issues that we've heard about, that are what this is really about. And it's striking to me that you could be an Urban Meyer who's been a high profile person for a very long time. And I'm sure that's very exhausting to be in that kind of situation, that you can never really let your guard down. But you're Urban Meyer, you're in Columbus, Ohio, you're at your own restaurant
with a half OSU
with half zip. I mean, be on alert if you don't want to be in the situation he found himself in, being drunk apparently, and somehow involved with a person he's not married to. I mean, it
wasn't dancing.
People pull their phones out for much more minor situations. He's a huge celebrity, especially in Columbus, Ohio. Like these days, if you don't want to be caught in that situation, don't put yourself in that situation. I mean,
right. Well, the other thing too, Geoff, is when there's a situation that doesn't add up, and you want to play Clue and figure out Professor Plum in the observatory with the lead pipe or whatever, or a cracky case like the gang from Scooby-Doo. You're like, I'm trying to figure out why we're talking about firing on the heels of an embarrassing video, even if he's he's not dancing with her, obviously. It's clear that this thing was not playful banter or harmless flirtation, but everyone's assuming that both sides are looking for an exit strategy. I mean, maybe the news bears that out. I mean, I know that Michael Lombardi thinks that there have been a lot of closed door meetings, and that there's likely to be conversation about how to orchestrate an exit strategy, right? First of all, ain't no exit strategy right now without having to pay the guy, because as things stand, he's not going to be any violation of some sort of morals clause or whatever, or conduct detrimental. Again, if adultery was cause, then any coach could be fired at any time, and owners can get away with not paying guys. But he's under a brand new contract for a number of years at a very healthy price. Shad Khan's not paying that at all. So if he wants to cut bait on Urban Meyer, I'd be surprised if both parties thought it was a mistake this early, even if you may not be pleased with how things are going. But if they're going to cut bait, it's going to be because they know they don't have to pay the guy. But the other part of it is that everybody assumes that he wants the job at USC, right? I don't know whether that's true. And then the other part of it is, does USC want him, especially with all the drama? We saw years ago his boy and a guy I've gotten to know, unfortunately, Greg Schiano, almost got the job at Tennessee, only for them to back out because of baggage, right? Urban, I think it's fair to say, has at least as much baggage as Greg did. So who knows in this era whether the University of Southern California would want to bring on somebody who's known to be a little bit of a character case.
And
So we'll see. I just some of it's not adding up to me as to why we're so sure that we're looking to part ways after whatever week 4 of the NFL season.
I think he naturally, while he's because of his history, he draws this kind of attention from a story perspective. And we know how sports reporters, there is given to the dramatic storyline as political reporters are. And, they're looking for a story, and this is a story. And it's, again, going back to the receipts part of this, I think it was the Comeback had this thing where they went through what he said, his wife's tweets, where they show her watching the grandkids and the timelines. I mean,
that he deserves a night out.
You really have to make sure your story is solid, because you can be in a place and have been, you're a high profile person, you've been filmed, how the viral videos that are out there reconcile with the story you put out there, how that reconciles with your spouse, your children's tweets, social media posts about what they said you were doing and what you said. I mean, it's you just can't, if you are that kind of person, you cannot fake it. You cannot make up your story. You got to make sure your story is straight. And then also, again, I feel like every episode I said, I'll bring Clemson into this, but his first comments, he tried to bring Trevor Lawrence into it and talk about the advice he gave Trevor Lawrence.
Leave me out of this.
He went on his bachelor party. It's like, why are you talking about Trevor Lawrence?
Right.
He had nothing to do with this.
Leave me out of this.
Right.
I'm sure Tim Tebow is mighty proud of his old boss too. But enough of that guy. He is who we thought he was. So let's move on to topic 2.
So I'll use our mentions of college football as our awkward segue into NIL.
Yes.
So
name, image, and likeness.
It's been interesting to me to see, this is our first season under NIL with football. It's interesting to see how different schools have tried to strategize and bring the resources they have on campus, whether they're law school or business school, to bear to help attract talent. States have crafted their NIL policies in ways to make their schools more advantageous to students with NIL. And then as far as, again, as a Clemson fan, we have not had the best season this year. And our starting quarterback was the star of Dr. Pepper Fansville. And to me, it's interesting that I think so many schools understandably focused on the potential compliance issues around it, where in the past we've had, schools and boosters and bribes and things, and focus so much on that and not on the talent management aspect of it, because I think there's a huge psychological locker room factor here, where one guy on the team is getting the deal with the local Waffle House, and the other guy is getting the Dr. Pepper deal. Right. And can the sophomore or freshman that got the huge deal get their head around that while also, doing what they need to do on the field? I've been an advocate for paying players. I think they're putting their bodies on the line in what is now a huge money-making enterprise. I think it's only fair that they somehow are compensated for that. But I think we're still figuring out there's a long way to go to figure out. There's so many things around it that we haven't quite figured out, or hasn't been figured
out. All right. So I've been drilling down on this in a big way in the last few months, as some folks who are getting involved in the space are asking for my take and on because of my sports PR background. And from what I've learned, the NCAA is starting July 1. Athletes, the Wild Wild West was open for business. Athletes are allowed to take these name, image, and likeness deals, or NIL as they're known. Nobody's come up with a better title since. And how it's manifested itself has been very interesting. The NCAA has scrupulously avoided managing, overseeing, regulating it. It has pushed a lot of the responsibility onto individual athletic directors and institutions to make sure that players aren't sponsoring porn sites, weed dispensaries, strip bars, even gambling, but I guess gambling's changing. Whatever the university may frown upon, right? Villanova University is obviously not going to be so cool with some of these things. Maybe wherever Urban Meyer is would be, and then. So the NCAA doesn't want to get sued, is trying to see where they need to be and what they need to smooth out or get involved in. But for right now, it's a gold rush. How it's manifested itself is obviously, the CAAs of the world are mining the college sports landscape for the next stars. Your quarterback for Alabama. That's obvious, right? So it's NIL could be the sort of waiting room for the NFL and pro stars of tomorrow across sports. But you've also seen lesser known athletes. So the offensive line for there's a great Wall Street Journal story about this. Offensive lines for University of Arkansas and a lot of other schools are getting barbecue deals, right? Mm. Some athletes, female athletes, and others are getting deals with Chipotle. A lot of these deals involve free food for life at Chipotle, free meals, and stocks in some instances. So what kinds of deals I find very interesting. Who they're coming from is very interesting. Who is appealing to marketers is also very interesting, in that, an athlete who's very promising is an obvious one, but a water polo player or a beach volleyball player from a certain university who has a large Instagram following and big engagement, they can quantify now the influence and put a price on how much someone is worth. So if there's a very, very attractive, female tennis player or volleyball player at a university who's not obviously going to go pro in anything and doesn't even have to be a great player on his or her team, but is attractive or entertaining or funny or has a profile, then they are monetizable, right, in some way, shape, or form. So, I was just looking at the news this morning. You have Oregon launched Division Street. Phil Knight from Nike, a company focused on helping Ducks athletes. Blue Sports Entertainment, Blueprint Sports and Entertainment is doing stuff with UNLV basketball team that has a monthly car allowance and some other stuff. You have the Draft Network starting a pod. You have Jackson State University launching Premiere to prepare students for the NIL era. Forbes mentions an LSU gymnast is receiving stock options for, in addition to cash. Vatek was another one that gets paid in barbecue, Mission Barbecue, and they get weekly dinners in exchange for social media promotion. They put prices on how much an individual Instagram post is worth. And then they apparently had done that with Notre Dame and Wisconsin. Illinois has some manufacturing company, has signed 20 Illini athletes. You have LSU has a cornerback who just announced the deal. Michigan has a running back who's openly soliciting NIL opportunities, like Inquire Within on social media, and so much more. And then you have policymakers, Senator Burr, who's looking to tax athletes' scholarships if they make too much NIL money. And then there's obviously all this other regulatory, legislative questions, whether the constitutionality of it, and then also finally the how state policies, California and others, are trying to create a competitive advantages for their home teams by making a landscape. Even if California doesn't, your state doesn't want to be business friendly, they may want to be recruiting friendly and attract the best athletes. I wish they would translate to the other stuff too, but they want to create an advantage for their home schools. And then it's also going to affect, SI had a piece on athletes choosing college over a developmental league or other options because of NIL.
Yeah, it's really interesting how these guys and girls can there's a guy, I think he's a defensive lineman or something for Kentucky, and he does a thing for like a lawn care company there. The ad for it is awesome. But and there's guys like with Clemson, the Darian Rencher is doing a podcast now, and so many folks like Eric McLean, former Clemson player, now on ACC network, but he didn't come to broadcasting until after he left school, and now he can start to see where someone like Rencher can get his chops. You know, who knows what happens after college, but he'll have this background that could set him up for another career after school. The opportunities are amazing, and it is interesting that you mentioned the Wild West. That I think some people perceive the rollout of NIL as this is the implementation, but really I think we're more of a beta testing phase. This thing has to run for a while. States have to shape their policies. There could be federal policy coming down the road. The NCAA has to figure out where the issues really are and what their role is going to be in that. There's a lot left to figure out, but it's been interesting. I was concerned that maybe the opportunities would only be found in the bigger ticket sports like football and basketball, but like you mentioned, it has trickled down to other sports. Someone had mentioned to me that like in women's softball, there's a company that makes masks and they've got deals with players, things I hadn't even contemplated possible. The money is finding its way into it. And also the problems could be not in the obvious places. The problems down the road could be in the softball program. It might not show up in the football program because the football program has been so aware of compliance issues for so long. It's interesting how athletic departments may not have to think about these things in places where, is there going to be a corruption scandal on a cross-country team or something? Who knows? I mean, there's a lot left to be figured out.
And then resentments to sort of Marsha within teams. You're getting a deal, I'm not getting a deal, and we both know as parents that's the part. I feel like coaching coaches and things, they haven't been able to prepare themselves. I mean, there's the celebrity part, right? I mean, there's always been the highest profile players, and but the money part, I mean, from a locker room teams apart easily. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's really hard. We both know as parents that you could have, give both of your kids a treat or both of your kids screen time. And there's always going to be one who got something they didn't have before, found money, but is still displeased that the other one, in their view, got more or got something unfairly. All right, couple of stats I want to run through with you. this is from some research I've done. There are 24 states that have fully enacted legislation already this early, right? In those states, 40 Power 5 schools, that's 61.5% of all Power 5 schools, 46 Group of 5 schools, that's almost 70%, 429 of non-Power 5 schools, and so on. All right. Additionally, 94% of all NCAA member institutions reside in states which have enacted or introduced NIL legislation, and only 4 Power 5 schools reside in states where NIL legislation has not been introduced. So, I mean, it is wild what's going on right now. So we'll see. Hopefully athletes will not only get the comp that they're due, and the Clemson jerseys with number 16 can have the name Lawrence on the back, and the money could go to the next Trevor Lawrence, but also some other folks too. And hopefully it also makes each of these athletes a better marketer, business person, and teaches them some good skills.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, you wonder if this trains, if players, get the opportunity to get the training in the business sense, since you don't have those professional players down the road to have the financial problems that there've been. That you come into, I've heard so much about now, like high school players are getting so developed, they're coming to college so much more prepared.
Yeah.
And now the college game is more intense than it used to be. So they're coming to the league more prepared. But when that business sense, now they get the training on the business side, they're coming into the league smarter and hopefully avoiding the pitfalls that so many players have had financially.
But also more distracted than ever before. So stay tuned, hold on to your hats. This is going to be nuts. It's going to get worse before it gets better, because there's really no official standing by, ready to, throw flags or blow the whistle if things get out of hand. I think we need to see how it gets out of hand before anyone gets involved. And, we're even seeing stories, speaking of politics of sports, or sport of politics, Politico running a story a couple of weeks ago, headline: major college sports are under siege and they want K-Street to save them. So, worlds colliding yet again.
Right.
All right, let's move on.
So we mentioned a professional league, so that provides another segue.
Well done.
I've joked a lot with Paul Lindsay about my favorite segue in local TV is when they don't have a segue and they say, "There's also this tonight." So there's when you're out of ideas. So there's also this today, which is lately we've seen several NBA players opining on being vaccinated or not.
Yeah, wow. Let me run with this.
Yeah, go run with it.
All right. Through some of my other pursuits, I've done some work on it. First of all, very interesting from the standpoint of the caricature of the unvaccinated, right? Like both of us are vaccinated, and not that it's anybody's business. I just outed both of us. But very interesting that there is a caricature.
I'm happy to talk about being vaccinated.
Right. Who the unvaccinated are, right? And of course, there are many that want to perpetuate a stereotype that they are, Trump voters, right? And that they're these, unenlightened hayseeds and deplorables and whatnot. Certainly this NBA trend in particular, but professional athlete trend has confused the caricature quite a bit, which I find very interesting. And then the other part of it is that these athletes are, regardless of whether you agree with them, and obviously we landed in a different spot on whether or not to get vaccinated, but holy crap, they're impressive. They know their stuff. They're not just like spouting off, and all the crap you hear about, athletes and politics and are usually unimpressive and unoriginal kind of talking points. But like the guys who've spoken out, I'm like, they've done their homework. They're really sharp. this is one time where you go, maybe I could learn something from an athlete about a given issue, because these guys know what they're not being told what to say. They're doing their own homework. So I've been very impressed with them. It's really put a monkey wrench in sort of the caricature of the Caucasian deplorable Trump voters that a lot of people think are the reason why we're not vaccinated, and some very, very intelligent, impressive Black athletes are leading the charge. But I think the other aspect of it too is that athletes we've discussed this before, have never been more empowered, have never had more juice, more influence, more control over their own destinies in good and bad ways. But I just finished, whether or not he's your cup of tea, I just finished Clay Travis's book called Republicans Buy Sneakers Too, which is very, very interesting and worth a multi-part episode on its own, and really speaks about how some athletes, your LeBrons or Colin Kaepernicks, are lauded by the media and maybe not saying a heck of a lot of substance. But in this instance, I'm like, these guys have something to say. I'm pretty impressed with how smart and it's brave. It's brave to take this position. It's not brave to take a position that's favored by the mainstream media and the overwhelming majority of the public. It's brave to go against the grain, and that's what a lot of these folks have done. So my respect goes to them, even though that's not the era we live in, I guess.
Yeah, and I'm not a huge basketball fan, so I can't recall the name of who I saw. I think it was a guy who plays for the Magic.
Yeah,
You had the one press conference where he went into this in detail, and again, I'm vaccinated. I'm a huge advocate of vaccination in general, and especially this vaccine. I've seen in my own family how the vaccine helped make a breakthrough case in my family. Not that big of a deal. And so I encourage everyone to get vaccinated. That being said, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not an epidemiologist, I don't pretend to be one. As I understand it, the evidence suggests that natural immunity acquired from having had COVID is as effective, if not more effective, than the vaccine. And so I think this is the player that for the Magic who was talking about this,
Jonathan Isaac
had COVID before, and so consulting his physicians and everything, and certainly he has a lot on the line to be healthy, felt like he didn't need it. It's just funny how, again, I'm a huge advocate of vaccines. There's a big anti-vax movement here in California that predates COVID about vaccination mandates in the schools. And I feel like when we start flirting with questioning vaccines, this vaccine its logical conclusion gets to all vaccines, which I think are huge public health plus. But it's just funny how the politics are such that it was brave for him to talk about it the way he did. And again, he clearly had thought about it quite a bit, and it wasn't just some hot take, and I think maybe the reason why we have this stereotype of who the unvaccinated person is because the kind of the Trumpy type unvaccinated people have been so vocal. But there's people who, have had it and maybe also if you're an employer, I think if you want to keep your workplace safe, I'm comfortable with the mandates like that as well. I mean, it's your choice to work there or not. But it's just funny how and I think there's a story about Portugal. Portugal has been a huge success in vaccination because they somehow threaded the needle and kept the politics out of it. And it's really sad how this has become, whether you're vaccinated or not, whether you talk about being vaccinated or not, is somehow an expression or extension of your personal politics. I think it's completely ridiculous. It's exhausting.
And even if that was the case, that it was a manifestation of your politics, it doesn't have to be the case that you must be a right winger if you feel a certain way. But like
right.
the
I don't know Isaac's
you're an
politics.
illegitimate person. I don't want to say cancel culture, but like the absolute, you shouldn't be, you should lose your job. You shouldn't be showcased. You shouldn't enjoy certain privileges. You should pay a public price. You should apologize. It's just like, I mean, and
Well,
if
so
you
now we
haven't
have
yet,
to step on the gas. If you have a position, you have to stay on the gas the whole time and
Yeah.
just barrel through everything and say F it, and it's I don't know, it's just completely, it's gotten so ridiculous.
it's sad, and
And
obviously
you can't even,
it's a major.
you can't even like how intelligently discuss it. And there's another thing too, another aspect of the unvaccinated that I've seen this kind of conversation on lefty Twitter, that basically there's no place for anyone to be unvaccinated. There's no circumstance in which it's possible that they can even contemplate that you could not be vaccinated.
Right.
I would argue there's an economic chauvinism in that, because there are clearly people who have chosen willfully to not be vaccinated. And there are people who talk about that and brag about that from a political point of view. There's also people who still to this day, they are the working poor, they don't have cars, they do shift work, they care for elderly family members, and they have not, because of circumstances, been able to get to be vaccinated. There are people who would like to be vaccinated, but haven't gotten there for whatever logistical reason. I know it may be hard for us to imagine, but there are people who haven't been able to. And it's like, I've seen conversations about this kind of population that can't even contemplate it and like speak about them with such
Contempt.
disregard and contempt. And it's like,
I know
everything these days, it's like tries to dehumanize people. Like their first job is to otherize and dehumanize people. And it's like, which is maybe a good segue to our next topic, which is
let me mention one more thing on this topic.
Okay.
Right. Obviously, hashtag science or whatever is been turned on its ear, because obviously you pointed earlier about natural immunity, and as has my body, my choice, which is also amusing how frequently we hear that. And regardless of whether or not it's right, it's very interesting to see, the different sides switch and use each other's language sometimes. But look, I think we should switch now to this next topic, but that's all with a plug in between for the new Chappelle special, where he kind of gets into.
I haven't been able to watch it yet.
Oh yeah, the cancellation stuff and how nasty we've all been to one another. And you know what? Final thing, I promise, is in talking to folks who are fellow communicators like we are, who have an expertise in the health space, some of whom are very dear to me. I keep on bringing up how is what's going on in Washington out of the White House and the media persuasion. If it's the administration's goal to get as many people vaccinated as possible, then why are we demonizing and vilifying people and otherizing them and dunking on them at every turn? And you just go, what public health campaign has ever attempted to intimidate and browbeat people into compliance? Like, this is not good communication.
It doesn't work.
Just clinically speaking, it's not. It's shitty from a human standpoint, but just think from a persuasion standpoint. And we're both students of persuasion, read books about persuasion. this is not persuasion. So that leads you back to, what's the real agenda here? Have you just written off all of the people who are unvaccinated and say it's not going to get any better, so at least let's win, let's win the popularity debate, or at least let's dunk on our adversaries as much as humanly possible? Or
when you have a high
have you
stakes
totally taken your
negotiation,
eyes off the ball, and it's more important to you to dunk on your opponents and virtue signal and condescend than it is to actually get people to come around and make each other safer?
when you have a high stakes negotiation, which getting the unvaccinated vaccinated has become,
Yeah.
you have to have a face-saving exit ramp for the losing side. This debt ceiling thing we're having, the reconciliation bill between the progressive Dems and the moderate Dems. I mean, you have to have a face-saving exit ramp. Otherwise, why
death
would
with
you
dignity.
stop?
Yeah.
Right. And so, in this shaming and owning and pounding on, again, I cannot be a more passionate advocate for vaccination. If you are listening to this and you are unvaccinated, even if you've had COVID, I mean, I understand the point of view, but please, I want you to. I cannot be more explicit about it.
I had COVID, my whole family had COVID, and we're all vaccinated.
Right. But you can't, people just don't, this is not how people work.
Yeah,
you cannot shame them or own them into it.
Yeah,
so
and
it just doesn't work.
My takeaway is the heels in this debate, the assholes in this debate, are not who the media and the White House think they are. They're being assholes. I mean, to be honest, they're being condescending, and this is not healing the soul of the nation or unifying people the way we were promised. That's enough out of that bullshit. Do you want to spend a minute on?
Is that like I hope that in whatever it is that figures out this puzzle. Another part of it is, I wish we could go down a whole rabbit hole on this, but they're using a language like it's all stick and no carrot.
Yeah, it's all punitive.
All the vaccines I've ever had is like, we're giving you the MMR vaccine so you don't get measles, and we're giving you tetanus the thing for this, and we're giving you that so you don't get that. And they're saying it like, oh, you need to get it so to protect the people who are already vaccinated from you. It's been turning it on its head, everything we've been told about vaccines my whole life. Now, maybe it was framed to be wrong, or maybe I understood it the wrong way. But it's everything I've heard, the messaging and everything about this issue has been.
And pardon all of us who heard a totally different tune out of Biden-Harris during the campaign. Pardon us who've heard a million different things out of Fauci, regardless of whether you like the guy. I mean, there are some people who want to jump to the conclusion that he's a bad dude. And look, just clinically speaking, pardon us if we've heard a lot of inconsistent and competing information from a lot of different people, including Dr. Fauci. And therefore there's confusion or concern from certain people. Like, can't you kind of budget for some of that or understand some of that?
That's remarkable to me is that we're this far into it, and our public health community has not learned anything about politics. These are political problems, right? And inconsistent information. It looks to people who are used to hearing politicians. They've become politicians, and it's just more, right, changing their tune, flip-flopping, whatever you want to call it. I remember like Alan Alda started. No, I love Alan Alda. He started a thing about. He started this like institute or something about scientific communication, helping scientists understand how to communicate their discoveries to the public. And I think, using like his training as an actor and everything else. And so I think our public health community really needs some kind of, they need,
A fresh start,
they need, yeah, I mean, they need media training or
like a
some
reboot.
kind of political education to
Yeah.
understand that, because this is the intersection of health and policy, which means it's political, and that
we all
is
agree.
express itself through regulations and ordinances and laws and everything else.
Right.
And
We all agree that
still, I don't think they've learned anything.
We all agreed that it's a crisis, right? So crisis communications tells you that if somebody fouls up, whether or not you have ownership over it or not, or some people just think you do, you got to own up to it. So why is nobody stepping forward and saying, hey, fair or not, Dr. Fauci, hit the showers. It's time for a pitching change. We need a different voice in there. Or, he or somebody comes out and says, listen, I know you've heard a lot of competing and conflicting, confusing information. Here's where things stand right now. I understand if you're not sure in light of all the information you've had to take in. These are heady times, but here's the best we can do today. And just like that. But instead it's like, you motherfucker, you haven't gotten vaccinated. Like, who's that going to turn around? So it just tells me that they're writing people off.
Right. I mean, I wish it did work, but it doesn't.
Dude,
I wish it was. I wish it was as easy as just owning someone, but it just doesn't.
I mean, if MFing people would change their minds, then I would be really, really good at it. Right. And I could tell you,
I say that all day. Right.
Yeah. Right. During work and after.
Right.
Anyway, and I wanted to bring up Sage Steele. Was she next on your list? ESPN
yes.
Sage Steele said that she's an Army brat, right? And you also the reason why that's important, because it's Jonathan Isaac. You could tell from their upbringings that they're raised a different way, right? And she being a military brat, a proud military brat, has some different perspectives, has a little swagger, and is not afraid to share her opinions, even inside Bristol, Connecticut, which, back to the Clay Travis book, is not exactly fostering diversity of thought and opinion. So she said, I guess, in an off-brand podcast or interview that she only got it vaccinated to keep.
It was like
Jay
Cutler, right?
Smoking Jay, of course,
yeah.
Right? When I need health news, I go to Smoking Jay. Anyway, and so she got out there and said there, and I guess it said some other stuff about Obama, right? And this is another example where, if it's Jamela Hill, it's okay to talk off script. But if it's Kurt Schilling or Sage Steele or Rush Limbaugh or, whoever else, not good to talk off script. Okay for ESPN to glorify and put on a pedestal the Colin Kaepernicks and LeBron James of the world, but not Jonathan Isaac and some of these other athletes that are taking a pretty brave stand, even if you don't agree with what they're saying. So it's just crazy, and you feel like it's a shame if we're gonna fast forward to the end here and that this turns into her getting a job at Outkick because there's no room for her at ESPN anymore. That's sad. But that's kind of like what's coming here, where, in politics, if you get chewed up and spit out by the system, then maybe Fox or Newsmax will have you. And I guess the same is true on these other fronts where, the Jason Whitlocks of the world or Sage Steele don't have a lot of options if polite society is done with them for having the audacity to go against the grain. That's dangerous stuff.
I saw a tweet about a part of what she said. I didn't see the whole interview, so I can't really opine on it, but I think sports is incredibly political. I think it's both a diversion from from life, which is political, but it is also political, especially like, I can't believe there's politics in the Olympics. Like the Olympics is an incredibly political event, but because it's interesting that, I don't know when exactly this started with ESPN, but it's become ESPN has become such a political topic. And if ESPN is to be political, there are many views in politics. And so it seems natural that there can't just be one political point of view on an entire network.
Yeah.
To have any interesting debate. I mean, otherwise they're just debating with themselves.
I keep waiting for the moment where you see the ratings continue to decline for the CNNs and MSNBCs. Bobby Burke from Outkick has a good piece on that. And you see ESPN has had their struggles that are in the Clay Travis book, and SNL we see this week premieres with lower ratings, and it's pretty plain to see why is this, right? It's because politics has invaded, infected, and sort of spoiled some of what we like about sports. That may be inevitable. There may be nothing we could do about all that, but you're just kind of waiting for some smart business people to say, hey, it's pretty limiting, and Republicans buy sneakers too. Republicans want to watch funny shows on Saturday night at 11:32. Republicans want to watch sports too, and with their children, and not have to pause the DVR and teach their kids during a commercial break about what I can't breathe means and stuff like that. And there's a lot of horrible shit that's going on in the world. We all know that. But it's really, really hard to avoid it. And I think it's unfortunately some people's agenda that everything needs to be political all the time. They've got to keep it real to ensure that the agenda moves forward, and the rest of us are just doing our best to survive, raise our, have peace in our lives and raise our children to be, good folks in their own right. So
yeah, I mean,
that's all to say. We should wrap soon because I need a nap.
There's so many divisions politically, left, right, whatever. And then there's this division between people who want to talk about and perform politics in all places and at all times. Some people never want to talk about politics, and some people are fine talking about politics, but just want a break sometimes. A little bit of a break.
We'll joust if it will reason with you if you can be reasoned with, right? But I'm not looking to get screamed at or demonized, right? If you've already made up your mind, then what's the point?
I mean, some things going on in the news that it hasn't bothered me to see this stuff percolate through to I have one kid who is old enough to be aware of the news, but I a lot of things happened last year when I was still living in DC, and that provide opportunities for me to talk to my daughter about things going on in the world. I didn't shy away from it. It didn't concern me. Some people aren't comfortable with that, and that's their business as parents to me. And it's it's just, I don't know, every time we have these conversations, there's always themes that there's themes that cut through everything we talk about on the show. This is definitely one of them. Right. We could talk about forever. Yeah. If you had more battery life, which I understand is quite low. So maybe this is a good opportunity to wrap up the conversation for today.
You're exactly right. As always, it's always a great chat. And my hope is that I can, at least my belief is I want to preserve my children's innocence and happiness, and for as long as humanly possible. And I'm not looking for anybody to bring any revelations about Santa Claus or anything else to them. That should be my call. So that's that. There's plenty of time for us all to be burdened with the issues of the world. So anyway, thanks for listening. Speaking of which, great chatting with you, Geoff, as always. And hope everyone out there enjoyed this, and stay safe out there.